there was this barber, and he decided that one of his New Year's resolutions needed to be that he was going to share his faith more with his customers. And so he made that decision January 1. January 2nd, he was going to work, and he was praying all the way, Lord, just help me share my faith. He got to work. He opened the shop. He went to the back, and he was preparing his stuff, and a guy came in, and he said, hey, I'd like a shave. The barber said, okay, I'll be right with you. Just have a seat here in the chair. He went back to get a nice, sharp, long razor, and he thought, I'm going to grab my Bible too, and God, just help me, because, I want this guy to go to heaven. I want this guy to go to heaven. So he comes back out with a knife and the Bible, and he says, I have a question for you. Are you ready to die? That might not be the best witnessing tactic to use, but hopefully we'll learn a few ways we can share our faith. And faith is my word for the year. As you know, every year I choose a word. And this year I kept thinking, okay, what's it going to be for 2020? And I kept thinking, okay, 2020 vision, so that there's a word that goes with that. And faith kind of kept coming to my mind. And Lauren, my accountability partner, and we always pick the same word. And, sometimes it's not the same word, and so we discuss it and arm wrestle if we need to see whose word is going to win. But this year, I'm kidding, we don't arm wrestle. Y'all are like, y'all do. We both came up with the same word of feeling like faith needed to be our word for the year. And so I want to focus on faith this year, 2020. But why did I choose faith? Well, when you think of 2020 and focusing and vision, 2020 vision, that speaks of what we see. 2020 is what we want to see, right? That is perfect vision. And I'm a person who has, as long as I can remember, not had really 2020 vision, okay? In fact, when I was a kid, I started wearing glasses when I was in 4th grade. I was 9 years old, yeah. I expected a better laugh than that, y'all, come on. Y'all are a little too nice. Okay, so I started wearing glasses in 4th grade, and I probably needed them actually a couple of years before that, because when I put those on, it was like, wow, this is what things are supposed to look like. And that's such a cute picture, don't you think? We didn't have a lot of money, and so that's probably why it took me a couple of years to get those glasses, and then I wore them for years. So here I am 3 years later, still the same glasses. Yeah, but would you believe that by the time I got to high school, I was prettiest? I didn't think so. I wasn't. But I was wittiest, okay? And I did get a little better than that in high school, yeah. So now maybe, oh, please. I was showing those first 2 pictures to my husband. I said, can you take these and scan them for me on the computer? And he said, okay, why? And I said, well, I want them on the computer. And Jill's coming back in. She might have missed those. Show those other 2 so that she can be totally embarrassed like her father was. Yeah. So he said, why do you want that? And I said, he said, you're not going to post that, are you? And I said, no, I'm going to show it in Mary Ministries. And he said, no. No, you're not. And I said, yes, I will. Everybody will laugh. And he said, they'll be laughing at you, not with you. And I said, I don't care. I need a laugh. And so anyway, we need things to be able to see clearly sometimes, right? And then I kept thinking about faith and my word for the year, but faith is something we don't see. Faith is trusting in the unseen. And in fact, the definition of faith is in Hebrews 11:1, where it tells us now faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see. And so faith goes beyond that physical vision, but I want to have 2020 faith. That's the kind of faith I want to have. Perfect faith. I know that's not completely possible, but that's my goal. And to walk by faith, there's not a map for that. You know, it's not a destination on a map. It is a daily trusting in God. And the first person in the Bible that it speaks of as walking by faith is in Genesis 5. It's a man by the name of Enoch. And it says that he walked with God faithfully, and then God took him. And so he was faithful while he was on this earth, and then he is now in heaven with God. And isn't that the desire for each of us, to walk faithfully and then be with God? So faith is a journey of the unseen. In 2 Corinthians, it tells us this in chapter 5, verse 7, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." And so that walk is an important walk. Why is it important? Because back to Hebrews 11, it tells us that faith, now let's go to the second one. Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists. And that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So, if we want to please God, we have to have faith. If we want to, the first step of that is believing that he exists and then seeking him. Now, I recently listened to a sermon by Dr. Ed Young, The Winning Walk, Second Baptist Houston. And it was on making decisions, but in it he talked about faith, and he brought out 3 really good points. He talked about that there are 3 levels of faith. And the first level is reason. We see a reason to have faith in something. There is a reason that has come to us. We begin to have an understanding, and that understanding leads to belief. And then we believe in that thing. And in our case, we're not talking about faith in just anything. We're talking about faith in God and faith in Jesus Christ, his Son. So we go from reason to belief, and then that belief leads us to commitment. And that is seeking God earnestly. There's that last part of that verse in Hebrews 11:6, where we begin to seek him earnestly. So it's a process. And when we do these 3 things, then we come to a place of certainty in our faith. And too many times we want to jump right straight from reason to certainty without going through that process of growing in our faith. And I know some of you may be thinking, well, Mary, haven't you been doing this class for about 30 years now, and you still need to work on faith? Yeah, I do. I still need to work on faith. And honestly, I hope I never get to a point where I say, okay, God, I've got enough faith. Can I just hold it right here? Can I just hang out here? Because you can't stay put. You're either going to be growing and moving forward, or you're going to be sliding backwards in your faith. And so out of those 2 choices, I want to continue to grow in my faith. I want to continue to learn. And I want to please God. Now, as I think about the word for the year, I will also set some goals, and you can call them resolutions if you want, but I am a person who likes to set some goals and have them in terms that are measurable. So with my faith, how am I going to grow that? Well, one of the ways is I'm going to be in God's Word daily. And this year for the third year in a row, I'm using the Read Scripture app, which is a little free app you can get on your phone. And it takes you day by day. You open the app and you go to the day and you read. It starts in Genesis. It takes you all the way through Revelation, day by day. About 10 or 15 minutes worth of reading. And it has part of a psalm each day, or sometimes a whole psalm each day on it too. And then you just check a little thing at the end, and next day you open up and it takes you to that. And so if you get 2 or 3 days behind, you can catch up, or you can just say, I'm going to where I should be, and start there and pick back up. But I have found that by being in the Word every day and going through the entire Bible, it really helps me grow my faith, because even though I've been through the Bible many times, and I've used other methods that are good too. A one-year Bible is a great way. A chronological Bible is a great way. I've done those too. This I like because it has little videos throughout it also, about Bible Project guys who do real clever, interesting overviews of the books of the Bible and different things about that book of the Bible. But being in the Word is something that I'm a creature of habit, and I get up, I get my coffee, I go sit down with either my Bible or my Bible app, and I begin reading, and it just helps me get my day started. And then I pray. And you may say, at this point in my life, I don't have that kind of time, and I understand that. And when I was little, my time with God was usually during their nap time. That's when I did it, but now it's early in the morning, and that's what works for me. It may work for you to be late at night or whatever. I tried that. It didn't work for me. I fell asleep, It was like, which I may need to go back to that. I don't know. But it is something that really helps me, and even though I've gone through the Bible many times, I'm still seeing things that seem new to me. I'm like, I know this had to be here last year, but no, I don't remember ever seeing this before. It's like, when did that arrive? So I continue to learn and see new things as God shines that light on that particular passage. I set other goals, of course, not just spiritual goals, but those are important, but goals related to my health and my time. And I don't have time to go into all the other goals that I've set, but they have to do with different aspects of my life. And I've written these out, and I've got a little chart that they're on. Lauren sent me a thing from Dave Ramsey that has a one-year deal that hits on all these different things. And if you want that link, I'll send it to you. But it's something that, it's for me to look at, to be reminded of what my goals are. I always say, if you shoot for nothing, you're going to hit it, all right? But let's make it something that's measurable and real. And so that's why I do this, And there are so many ways, helps and things. I've got a watch that'll tell me how many steps I take and how much time I spend exercising, and things like that are helpful to me. Sometimes it says, get up, you need to stand, Those things are all helpful, and there are so many other things that can help us, because when we are at our best, we are better able to serve God, and we become better, not just Christians, but wives or mothers or siblings or children. So I want to be at my best. Now, back to Genesis. When we last left off, we didn't have everybody here that's here today. So I'm going to do a bit of a review, but it's not just for the new people, because if you're like me and you've been away from Genesis for a month, it's like, yeah, what was that about? Where were we? What was it? So let's do a bit of a review very quickly before we get to where we are today. Now, Genesis is, of course, the first book of the Bible, and it's divided into 2 parts pretty easily. The first 11 chapters tell us about 4 major events. Creation, okay, that's God taking nothing and making it everything that exists. He created everything in an orderly fashion, creating every animal of its own kind. And then his crowning creation is mankind, humans. And he says that he is creating them that we are created in the image of God. So people are the only thing that are created in the image of God. And that is so important that we recognize that we are God's image bearers. We're going to see as we go through the Old Testament in particular that a lot of these people are going to be idol worshipers. And what does that mean? They're going to make an image of the God they believe in. They're going to make his image. And when we get to Exodus and in the 10 Commandments, God is going to say, don't make any image of me. Don't make an idol of me. Why? Because he has already created images of himself. And that is you and that is me. We are his image bearers. And as such, there are ways that we are to live and love and behave. And there are laws that we are to keep. And right from the beginning, everything was perfect. And God placed Adam and Eve in that perfect garden of Eden and gave them choices. And the choice was, you can eat anything here you want, just that one tree in the middle of the garden. Knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat it. Don't touch it. And it didn't take too long, though, until they did. And that's the fall. That's when sin was introduced into the world. So that's the second major event in Genesis. Then mankind kind of spiraled down, even though they were covered, their sins were covered. And God said to Adam and Eve, go forth and multiply and fill the earth. Okay, they had kids, their kids had kids, they lived a long time. It goes through the generations and the genealogy, and God looks down at a certain point at earth, and he says there's just one guy there that's righteous. It was Noah. And so he said to Noah, I'm going to destroy this world and start over again using you. So build this big ark. Put your family on it. So he took his wife, his 3 sons, their 3 wives, and animals, got on the boat. God destroyed the world and started over with Noah and his family and gave him that command again. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And so again, the world began to repopulate. And as it did, they were repopulating, but they were not filling the earth. They were all congregating in one place on the earth, and they were building a tower to make a name for themselves. And as they made this name for themselves, this tower, God confused their languages. There was one language, confused their languages, and then they spread out and again began to do what they were supposed to do, fill the earth. And then God, and so that was the Tower of Babel. So then we get to 4 major characters in the book of Genesis: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. With Abraham, we have a man that God called from a pagan place, Ur of the Chaldeans, if we could have the map up. Ur was way over here by the close to the Persian Gulf today. That's where Abraham and his family were living, and God called him and he said, I want you to go to a place that I will show you, and from there I will make a great nation of you, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, but through you all the peoples of the earth will be blessed. And so he calls Abraham, and he said, leave your family and your land and your friends and go to where I will take you. And he wanted him to come right over here, but this is the Arabian desert. There was not even a feeder road going across that thing, okay? So he had to hop on the freeway and make his way up here to Haran. And then there was the King's Highway and the Way of the Sea were the 2 major freeways going from that area down to the Promised Land, which was Canaan. And so he goes up there. He takes his wife, he takes his nephew Lot, a brother, a father. He didn't quite leave everybody behind. They make it to Haran, and then they hang out there a while. They get stuck there a while. They weren't going and being completely obedient, but then his father dies, and he leaves a brother there, and he takes a nephew, and they go on down to where they're supposed to be, here in the Promised Land. And God continues to give him promises for himself and his offspring, and promises for the land that they're going to populate. And so Abraham and his wife Sarah, they are all in, yes sirree. At 75 and 65, they are all in, but guess what? About 10 years later, so they still haven't had even one kid. So he's saying, God, what about all these descendants and people? And Sarah's like, okay, I know it's me. I know it's me. I can't have kids. She was postmenopausal and all that comes with that. And she wasn't making the best decision. She said, here, take Hagar, my servant, and you sleep with her so that you can have a descendant. And Abraham said, okie doke. And from that, Ishmael was born. Ishmael was born. And God said there's going to be some blessings for Ishmael, but Ishmael is not the child of the promise. He is not the one of the covenant. You did things your way. I'm still going to do things my way. And they waited. And they waited. And they waited. And when it seemed utterly impossible, Sarah was 90 and Abraham was 100, she had Isaac, the son of the promise, the covenant, that second person of our major characters that we're seeing in this part of the book. And so we see the covenant then passed from Abraham to his son Isaac. And Isaac marries Rebekah, and Rebekah is back from up at Haran, one of the relatives, because Abraham's like, go find a wife, not from around here, from back where our relatives are, not one of these Canaanites. And so he went back, he met Rebekah, he marries her, he brings her home, and it takes a while for her to conceive a baby too, but they don't use the same tactic as mom and dad did. They just waited, and God was faithful, and she got pregnant. And as she was pregnant, there was a point where she prayed to God, like paraphrasing, what is going on here? Because there was so much action in her womb. And God said to Rebekah, there are 2 nations in your womb. Not just 2 people, not just 2 sons. There are 2 sons, 2 nations in your womb. And the older will serve the younger. Well, that's not the way birthright works. The oldest son becomes the leader of the household, the one who gets the double portion, and the one who, is in charge after dad dies. But he says, no, the younger will serve the older. So these 2 sons are born. Esau is born first. That means hairy. And his nickname later becomes Edom because his hair is red, and Edom means red. So he is born first, but holding on to him and trying to pull him back in is his brother Jacob. And the name Jacob means heel catcher, supplanter, and deceiver. And so from that, we see that Jacob, even though he's going to be the one of the promise, he's going to be that third character, he uses a lot of deception along with his mama Rebekah helping him. Deceive his brother, deceive his father, get the birthright, get the blessing. Again, God was going to fulfill his promise one way. They kind of forced it a little bit different way. But Jacob is the son of the promise. Now, when he does deceive his brother and get the blessing, then his brother Esau is so furious that he says, okay, As soon as Dad dies, I'm killing you. I'm getting rid of you. So Mama tells Jacob, leave here, go to where our relatives up, back at Haran. By this time, the name is changed to Padanaram. And go up there and find a bride there. So he goes up there, and he sees Rachel, who happens to be one of his cousins, and he falls in love with her, and he is willing to do anything for her. So he asks for her hand in marriage. Her father Laban says, I'll work 7 years and you can have her. He's like, I will do it, it says, and it seems like it was just a day to him. I mean, just one of those real romantic Bible moments. And there's not a whole lot of them, so you got to notice them when they pop up. So he works 7 years, and it's the wedding day, and, she's wearing this beautiful veil. It must have been pretty heavy. Because when he wakes up the next morning, he found out that he did not marry Rachel, but that he married her sister Leah. And when he confronts Laban about it, he says, don't you know anything about the firstborn? The firstborn is the first one to get married. And so he gave him, the deceiver of his firstborn brother, a lesson about the firstborn. And so he had to work another 7 years and wait a week to marry Rachel as well. So he's got 2 wives. They start having kids and more kids, and then they each have a time where they can't have kids, and they have concubines who come in and have kids for them, and like surrogate mothers. And so it ends up where we were last time in Genesis, that God has now said, it's time for you to go back to the promised land, Jacob. And so he has 11 sons. He has a daughter, Dinah, and they start heading back. And as they come back from Haran, which is about up here, okay, they come down here to the promised land, and they come, when Jacob had left, he told God, he was at Bethel. That's the place where he had the dream. He was by himself. He was running away, scared from his brother. He has the dream there, and God speaks to him. He sees a ladder or a stairway to heaven with angels ascending and descending on it. Remember that? And he said, God, if you'll go with me and be with me when I come back, I will come back here and I will worship you here. And so he went away. God's been with him all the time. And now he's coming back. And as he's coming back, he doesn't go to Bethel. He takes a detour and comes over here to this side of the Jordan. And is coming along. And he hears that his brother Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men. Well, he thinks this cannot be a welcome party. Last thing I heard from him was, I'm going to kill you. So he starts devising a plan to appease his brother, sending ahead livestock because he's accumulated a lot of stuff. Livestock, sheep first, and then goats, and then, gifts. And they're coming in stages. And then he sends his wives and children, and finally himself. But on that last night before he sees his brother, he is all alone. And God again appears. And he wrestles with God, it says, all night long. And his hip got dislocated. And God changed his name from Jacob, deceiver, to Israel, wrestles with God. And that name is going to be showing back up in our story today as we go forward. But then he met his brother Esau, and Esau is like, hey, why did you, they hugged, they were crying and happy, they loved each other, it was like nothing had ever happened. And Esau said, why don't you come down here to Seir, that's where I'm living, and y'all come and live with us. And Jacob's like, okay. And then he said, well, I'll travel with us. And Jacob's like, no, we're going to be going slow with all these animals and kids and babies. And y'all go ahead, and we'll just go slowly, and we'll meet you there. And so Esau goes back down to Seir, And Jacob, instead of going and following like he said, he crosses the river and goes to a place called Shechem. And we saw in our last chapter that we did before our Christmas lesson that Jacob bought some land there, and that's where his family was living. And that's where we pick up today. Open your textbook, chapter 34 of Genesis. And in this, we're going to see really a very shameful incident in Israel's history. And one of the reasons that we can trust that the Bible is true, and there's many reasons, but one of the reasons is most ancient history that was written left out the bad parts, left out the bad stuff that their nation did, left out even battles that they may have lost or problems that they had. They made their leaders look really good and their country look really good. And so this is ancient history, but it shows the people as they really were. I mean, God is not glossing over the actions of his people. We see it as it all took place and the things that happened to them and the things that happened because of them. Verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, and she's listed back in Genesis 30. Leah had 6 sons by this time, and then her 7th child that she physically bore herself was Dinah. It says that Dinah went out to see the women of the land. Now, it's thought that years have passed by this point, by the time that they had left Haran, Padan Aram, and had come to this place. And here she is. Sounds like she's the only girl listed. So, bunch of brothers. She goes out to see who? She wants to go see the women. I'm going to go to town and see some girls. Verse 2. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her. So we're introduced to this guy, Shechem. The name of the town is Shechem. The head guy in town is Hamor, and his son is called Shechem. So he's like the prince of that town. It says he saw her, he seized her, he lay with her, and he humiliated her. And some translations say he raped her. There's not an actual Hebrew word for that, but that's accurate. He took this young woman, he raped her. Verse 3. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." So after wrongfully raping her, now he's expressing strong feelings for her, and he wants to marry her. And he sounds kind of like a spoiled brat to me. "Dad, you get her for me. I want to marry her." Now, Jacob heard that he had defiled, and that word means made unclean sexually, so that's another reference to the fact that it was rape, that he had defiled his daughter Dinah. But his sons were with his livestock in the field, so Jacob held his peace until they came. All right, so let's think about this for a minute, about who is responsible for the rape of Dinah. Because if you read a lot of commentaries and, just talk to people who read this and think about it, they want to blame a whole host of people on this. Some people want to blame Jacob because he's the head of the household, and he and Leah both, they should have not let their daughter go into town by herself. Custom was in that day that you would have a chaperone. If you were a single woman, you would not just go into town by yourself. And so they're saying, hey, it's mom and dad's fault. They didn't do what they should have done as parents. Other people would say, well, it's Dinah's fault because maybe mom and dad had said that. Maybe they didn't even know she snuck into town. She's probably a teenager at this point. And so maybe she did this, so it's Dinah's fault. But others would say, well, it's Hamar's fault because he didn't raise his son better. But make no mistake, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made, but the guilty party is Shechem. And so, people like to make a lot of excuses and reasons, and rape is something that is very much in the news today. It happens in corporations, it happens in Hollywood. Unfortunately, it even happens in ministries. And so there are things we can do to prevent sometimes, and there are sometimes not. But Shechem himself is ultimately the one who is responsible. Let's move forward, verse 6. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And the sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry because he had done such an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done. So the brothers hear about it, man, they stop working and they come in and they are angry, as you can imagine. As you can imagine, they're very upset. They said this kind of a thing shouldn't even be done. Now, we don't have the 10 Commandments yet. But yet people inherently know the basics of good and evil. And they know. We have consciences that tell us this is wrong. And so they are very angry about this. Hamor spoke, verse 8, Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves, and you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it. And Shechem also said to her father and her brothers, so Dad was talking, now Shechem, the son himself, is going to jump in, and he's going to say, let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give you. Ask me for as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife. So he is saying, I'll give you anything, I'll pay you anything, just please let me marry her. The dad is saying, hey, let's just partner up here. Let's all be, instead of being two tribes, let's all be one big happy tribe. Verse 13. The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully. Deceitfully? Now, where would they have learned deceit? They answered Hamor deceitfully because he had defiled their sister Dinah. And they said to him, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are, by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and we will be gone. So they make this proposal back. Verse 18, their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now, he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of the city. And the city gate in ancient times, that's where like the mayor and city council hung out. Was there at the city gates. That's where the judges were who made decisions. So if you had something important to take care of, so they go to the city gate, they meet with the men of the city, and it says that they said, verse 21, these men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only this condition will the men agree, to dwell with us and become one people when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. And then will not our livestock, their property, and their beast be ours? Only let's agree with them, and they will dwell with us. And all those who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all of those who went out of the gate of his city. So they agreed to this. They agreed. They were all circumcised. Now, circumcision was introduced back in Genesis 17. It was God's ideal. He speaks to Abraham, and he is saying, you're going to be set apart as a special nation, and part of that is you and all of your descendants, and even those people who live in your household, all the males, must be circumcised, like right away. And then as baby boys are born, on the 8th day, they are to be circumcised. And this is a sign of the covenant that you are receiving from me this land as an everlasting possession. So it is a covenant with God, and it is a covenant for the land of Israel. And so this was the sign of, we receive this, we accept this, we believe this. It was an act of faith in God and in his covenant. Now, as Jacob's family is making this deal with Hamor and the people of Shechem, faith in God is not ever mentioned. This is just kind of a bargaining thing. And so this covenant, this deal they're making is nothing but carnal and earthly. They are each wanting something out of this deal. It is not tied to God, and it is not tied to faith. And so this is making a mockery of circumcision. Verse 25 says, on the 3rd day, when they were sore, okay, this is Shechem and the men of the town. On the 3rd day, when they were sore, 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, his number 2 and number 3 sons, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure, and they killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. And the sons of Jacob came upon the sleigh, and they plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys and whatever was in the city and in the fields. They took all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives and all that was in their houses. They captured and they plundered. Okay, do you think that this was an act of God? No, this was an act of vengeance by these angry brothers. Did they have a right to be angry? Absolutely. Is this the best way to handle it? No. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. We'll see that several times as we go through the Bible. Jacob finds out about it, verse 30. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. So Jacob finds out, and he is scared. Like, man, we're going to stink to the neighboring countries and peoples. And he's really, if you read this, it looks like he's most concerned about himself, because he uses that first person pronoun like 8 times. Look at this again, at what he says. You have brought trouble on me, 1, by making me, 2, stink to the inhabitants of the land. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. So who is he most concerned about at this point? Is there any doubt? He is worried for himself. And they answer him and say, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? So Simeon and Levi try to justify their actions. But their deeds are going to be brought up even later on in their lives. And there are consequences, of course, to doing things our own way rather than doing things God's way. Horrible chapter. Horrible chapter, but we don't skip over the chapters that we don't like, because even in those chapters, there are things that we can learn. And even in those chapters, we can see the grace of God, because he's still not done with these people. I mean, you'd think he might go, whew, I'm bringing on another flood. And then he goes, oh yeah, that's that rainbow thing. I can't do that. But no, human failure cannot change the promises of God. And even now, this is not a license to sin. It's not like, well, then let's just do whatever we want. There are consequences to sin, but God is going to continue to be faithful to his promises. He is going to do what he said he was going to do, and he is going to make this a nation that is going to eventually bless the whole world, and that's through Jesus Christ. Chapter 35. Now Jacob decides it's time to move. Well, it's because God tells him. Verse 1. God said to Jacob, arise and go to Bethel and dwell there and make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. So God's talking to him and going, hey, get up and go to where you said you were going to go. When you left the country, you were there and you said, if you'll go with me and be with me, then when I come back, I'll come to this place and I'll build an altar and I'll work. And he said, go. You've taken a detour. I'm not done with you though, but go to where you're supposed to be. Go to Bethel. So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among you. What? They had foreign gods? They're God's people. What are they doing with these foreign gods? Well, if you'll remember, Rachel took some of her father's idols when she left town, and then they've been living in the midst of Canaanites, idol-worshiping people. So, when you're around that a lot, you tend to pick up on what the people around you are doing. So here they've got some foreign gods, so he's going, get rid of the foreign gods, number one. Number two, purify yourselves. And so how do we do that? That's confession of sin. Get yourselves right. Purify yourselves. And they were doing it externally and internally, okay? And third thing, change your clothes. Change your garments. Okay, we're getting a good, clean start. Get rid of idol worship. Confess your sins. We need to clean up our act. And we're going to where God has called us to go. Verse 3, let us arise and go to Bethel so that I may make there an altar to the God who answers me in the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone. So he's acknowledging, yeah, God has been with me the whole time. He's been right there with me wherever I've gone. When I went up to Padanaram, he was with me. When I went down to meet my brother, he was with me. Even when I went to Shechem and wasn't supposed to be there, God was with me. He says, so we're going to go to where God has called us, and we're going to build an altar there. And so they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods that they had and the rings that were in their ears. And by the way, we're going to collect your earrings before you leave here today. Just go ahead. And Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree that was near Shechem. So he said, let's get rid of this stuff. Is there anything in your life that you need to get rid of? You're going, I don't have any foreign gods. Yeah, but are there any idols? Is there anything in your life that takes precedence over your relationship with God? Is there anything that's taken first place that's an idol if it's not God? Is there anything that needs to be moved out or just moved into a more proper priority? Check that out. Is there anything you need to confess to purify yourself? And then, is there an altar you need to make? And that's just a way of saying, I'm going to recommit myself to God. I'm gonna worship God. And so the first of the year is a great time to recommit yourself, you know? It's a perfect time to recommit yourself. And we see over and over in the Bible that God keeps repeating his promises to his people like they need reminders. Hey, so do we. And that's why when we read the Bible and you say, man, didn't he say this a lot? Yeah. God repeats his promises and his warnings. And his faithfulness is repeated over and over. And that's a reminder for us to get back on track. Like Jacob needed to get back on track, so do we. There are times when we need to get back on track, and we need to get rid of some stuff in our life. We need to confess our sins, and we need to recommit ourselves to him. So that's what they're doing. Verse 5, and as they traveled, a terror from God fell upon the cities all around them so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So God restrained the surrounding Canaanites from avenging them for the massacre that they had caused back in Shechem. And Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan. He and all the people were with him. And there he built an altar and called the place El Bethel. Now, El means God, and Bethel means house of God. So he's building an altar in Bethel, but he's calling El Bethel, means God, the house of God, and he is recommitting there. And it says, because there God had revealed himself to him when he had fled from his brother. So he's back and he's worshiping God. Verse 8, and Deborah, Rebekah's his mother, Rebekah's nurse died, and she was buried under an oak beneath Bethel, so he called its name Elon Bakoth. Now, Deborah was his mother's nursemaid, so it was probably like Jacob's nanny, if you will, somebody who was special in his life, and so it's just noting that she died here and was buried there. Verse 9, God appeared to Jacob again. This is the 6th time in the Bible that we see God appearing or speaking or coming in a vision to Jacob. This guy is a patriarch of the faith. He is going to be the head of this, and is the head already of this tribe that's going to later become a nation. And so here God is appearing to him again. And it says, he had appeared to him again when he came from Padan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. So he called his name Israel. And so he's revisiting that name again, because even though he changed his name, Jacob has not been going by the name Israel. He's still going by Jacob, and he's going, so you're where you need to be. I'm reminding you, your name has changed, and it's Israel, and so let's get back on track. And God said to him, I am God Almighty. That's El Shaddai in the Hebrew. God Almighty. He's saying, you are Israel, I am God. Be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so we're seeing that phrase again, that phrase that was given to Adam and Eve, that phrase that was given to Noah and family, that phrase that was given to the people after the flood and at Babel. And so now this is being given to Jacob, to be fruitful and multiply. And he repeats the promise. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your own body, or from your own loins, it technically says. And what that means is your descendants, from your descendants, some of them are going to be kings. You're going to have kings in your family line. And he says, the land that I gave to Abraham, your grandfather, and Isaac, your father, I will give to you. And I will give the land to your offspring after you. Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken, and Jacob set up an altar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering on it, and he poured oil on it, and Jacob called the name of the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. So we see this, that God is going to be faithful to his promise. Again, even though Jacob has messed up, God is faithful. He's keeping that promise, and that promise is passed from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. And this land, he is saying, is going to be yours, and you're going to have many descendants, and even kings are going to be among those descendants. Verse 16. Then they journeyed from Bethel, when they were still some distance from Ephrath. Now, God had never said you've got to live at Bethel, you've got to stay there forever, but it was like you've got to go back there and set up an altar and worship me there, and then you're going to take the land. The land is going to be coming. The land is coming. So they journeyed from Bethel, and when they were still some distance from Ephrath, which is an older name for Bethlehem, Rachel went into labor, and she had hard labor. Now remember, Rachel is his favorite wife. That's the one he really wanted to marry. And she was not able to have but one son so far, Joseph, and now she's about to deliver another. And it says she had hard labor. And when her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for you have another son." And as her soul was departing, for she was dying, she called his name Ben-Oni. Now, Ben-Oni could mean son of my sorrow. Ben means son, and the other it's thought means son of my sorrow. But his father called him Benjamin, and that means son of my right hand, son of the right hand. So he's not, don't call him son of sorrow, let's call him son of my right hand. He's going to be my right-hand man. And so the father named him Benjamin. We're going to see later on in the Old Testament that Benjaminites, though, are known for having a strong congregation of left-handed guys. In fact, in Judges, it's going to talk about 700 Benjaminites that were left-handed that could, wipe out an army. They could hit their target and never miss. So, just a little Bible humor there. Son of my right hand. He's left-handed, though. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb, and it is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Now, it's Moses writing this, 400 or 500 years later, but the pillar was there. And today, it is still commemorated with this building that was built over the place by the Crusaders. And then on top of this, there's another building now that is built over that, and a mosque. And Christians and Jews and Muslims all want to go there and worship. And there are different entrances depending on what faith you are to go, but Jews consider it the third most holy site in Israel. The first being the Western Wall, which is part of the Temple Mount, the second being the Cave of the Patriarchs, and the third being Rachel's tomb. And Jews will often go there and will pray to Mother Rachel to be able to have a child, to be able to get well, and to intercede for them to God. And so that is a place that is still standing today and commemorates the place of Rachel's burial. As we continue on here, verse 21 says, Israel, okay, that's Jacob, he's using his name. It's going to kind of flip back and forth, though. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. And while Israel lived in that land, Reuben, his number one son, his oldest son, Reuben, his son, went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard of it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. So it doesn't go any further about that here. But Reuben, as the firstborn, when his dad dies, he would have received, like I said, double portion of all the inheritance. He would have been head of the family, and he would have acquired any wives and concubines that his father had. Not his own mother, but any others. And so here he is acting like his dad is dead, and he is taking one of his father's concubines, and that is a detestable thing. Because of it, he's going to lose his birthright. Because of what Simeon and Levi did, they're going to lose their birthrights too. So and then it starts listing the sons. So Reuben, the sons of Leah, verse 23. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, okay, losing his birthright. Simeon and Levi, they're losing their birthright because of the massacre. We come to number 4 son, Judah. He is going to be the one who receives who is kind of becoming the head of the household in a sense, but not fully. And we'll see that play out later in the book of this book of Genesis. But he is the line from which Jesus will come, and the kings will all come from the line of Judah. And it names Issachar and Zebulun, the sons of Rachel, are Joseph and Benjamin, the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant, Dan and Naphtali, the sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, Gad and Asher. These are the sons, 12 of them, of Jacob, who were born to him in Padanaram. And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, or Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, and it's called Hebron today. And that's where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years, and Isaac breathed his last, and he died and was gathered to his people, old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So we have here Jacob finally is getting to see his father again. He's been gone over 20 years. He never got to see his mom again. His mom died while he was at Padanaram. He's back. He sees his dad. His dad dies. He and his brother bury him here at Hebron, and it's called the Cave of the Patriarchs, and there's a big building over it today in Hebron. And not only was Abraham and Sarah buried there, Isaac is buried there, probably Rebekah, we're not sure, and there are going to be other patriarchs that are buried in this place, so it's called the Cave of the Patriarchs, because there is a cave that's underneath the church that's built on top of it. Chapter 36. These are the generations of Esau, that is Edom. Now remember, Esau meant hairy, Edom means red. His descendants become known as the Edomites. And it begins by telling about Esau took his wife from the Canaanites, and it mentions Adah and Oholibah, the daughter of Anah, and then it mentions, verse 3, Basemath, Ishmael's daughter. Okay, so Ishmael shows back up here. And Esau marries one of his daughters. So we have two people that were not part of God's covenant that are intermarrying here. Okay, we've got Isaac, son of the covenant, and Jacob, son of the covenant, and then the brothers that were not really part of the covenant, but they intermarry. And these people become the Arab people and later the Muslim people. Okay, so we have, we're going to see the fulfillment of that, what God told to Rebekah. There are two nations in your womb, because there are the Israelites and there are the Arabs, and yeah, they are wrestling from the get-go. There are issues, and we know that wrestling, that battle is still going on today. And so why did they even put Esau's descendants and list them here? And it's just, they're going to list them just up to a certain point, but they become a prominent nation. And if we could have that map back, down here, what was called Seir later becomes known as Edom. And then later still, it's going to be called Edomia. And so these people are generally going to become the enemies of the Israelites and the enemies of the Jews. But it's listing this because they are still people that God cares about. God wants all people to come to him and believe. But we see a couple of other names that are important here. In verse 12, in the middle of it, it talks about Amalek. And the Amalek grows up to be a man who has a whole nation of people, a whole tribe of people known as the Amalekites. And they become enemies of the Jews. Would y'all like me to read this chapter to you? Because I'm not going to. I am not gonna read it. What I'm going to tell you is this, a summary of some of this, and it continues on in the New Testament, and Old and New. Okay, Edom had 4 wives. One was Ishmael's daughter. Okay, then there was Amalek that I just mentioned. Amalek becomes the father, the head of the Amalekites. They are the first enemy that the Israelites face as a new nation coming out of Egypt. Exodus 17, we're going to be studying that later this semester. They come against the Amalekites, their very first battle. So we see a battle going on there. Then if we go to Agag, an enemy of the Israelites. The first king of Israel is King Saul, and he comes up in a battle, and Samuel goes, you got to go take out the Agagites, take out Agag and his people. And so Agag is a descendant of Esau and the Edomites. So we've got Edom, we've got Amalekite, we've got Agag, and then we have Haman. Haman is mentioned in the book of Esther. He is the bad guy, boo, hiss. He's the one who wants to annihilate all the Jews and has this plan devised to do it. Guess what? He's an Agagite, so another descendant of Esau. And we get to the New Testament, and we come to Herod the Great. He is called an Idumean, because by that time, the Edomites in that area has changed name to Idumea. And so we have Herod the Great, who hears from the wise man that a king has been born. And so he tells his guys, go wipe out all the baby Jews, males 2 years and younger. And then one of his sons, and he had there's a few Herods in the New Testament, is ruler when Jesus, the greatest of the Jews, is crucified. So we see a battle that continues throughout the Bible. So that's why this genealogy is important, and we'll see it continue to pop up. Now, we're not ending the life of Jacob here, but Joseph is going to be the main character starting next week. But there's much that we can learn from the life of Jacob. We can learn that we need to do things God's way, and that we do not need to lie or deceive. Because when we do, well, what goes around comes around. We reap what we sow. So you can do things God's way, and it goes a lot smoother, or you can do things your way. Now, when you do it God's way, that doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean it's going to all fall right into place automatically, and you're never going to have a struggle. But it means it's going to go a lot better than if you try to veer from God's way and do it your own way. Next thing we can learn is don't detour off God's path for you, or you will be in dangerous territory. Go where God tells you to go. Stick with Him. Stick with His plan. And then we can see through the life of Jacob, and really through Abraham and Isaac as well, that God often repeats His promises to us. And you know, we have a book of His promises, and we can read them over and over and see what He has promised to do. And God is faithful. Great is His faithfulness. And then we see that we should often recommit ourselves to Him. These patriarchs of the faith, they get off track, but then they get on track, building an altar and worshiping God. And that is their way of recommitting themselves to God. And so I'm not telling you go out and get a rock and build a pile of rocks and pour oil and wine over it. I'm just saying, this is a new year. And this is a wonderful time to recommit yourself to God. Maybe for some of you, it's a time to commit your life to God. Maybe you've never actually done that. Maybe today, at the beginning of 2020, is the perfect time to do that. It's an act of faith. But as far as recommitment, if your life is taking a detour, it's time to get back on track. It's time to reset. Let God reprogram your internal GPS system. taking you on His route, His path. There's no better time to do that than today. It's an act of faith. Ephesians 2:8 tells us, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast." You know, you may be sitting here today and you may be thinking, I'd like to commit my life, or I'd like to recommit my life. I just don't think I'm strong enough to do things God's way. But God will give you the strength. He will help you do it. He will be with you like He was with Jacob all the way. You're going to look back at your life and you're going to say, I can see that God was with me all the way. I'm going to lead in a prayer, and during it, if you want to pray along silently with me and commit or recommit your life to God, I would ask you to do that. Lord God, we love you, and we thank you for being a merciful and gracious God. Thank you that you have provided a way for us through your Son, Jesus, that we may, as an act of faith, receive eternal life. Lord, this new year, we want to commit or recommit our lives to you. Lord, we want to admit that we are sinners. We want to clean up our lives and get rid of anything in our lives that should not be there, oh God. Lord, help us to do this. Help us to have faith. Help us to believe. We want to seek you earnestly this year, this decade, and for the rest of the time that you have us here on this earth. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.